Have you ever wondered what truly brought down the Roman Empire? It wasn't a single battle, a sudden invasion, or one weak emperor. Rome didn't fall because it was weak. It fell because it believed it could never fall. This isn't just a story about ancient history, it's a timeless warning about the deadliest enemy of all: overconfidence. It's a force that didn't just blind Rome, it dismantled it from the inside out, piece by piece, until nothing was left but ruins and a lesson for the ages. For centuries, Rome was the center of the known world, a titan that cast a shadow over all its rivals. From the misty shores of Britain to the sun-scorched deserts of Mesopotamia, its legions were legendary, a symbol of disciplined, unbeatable might. Its engineering marvels, aqueducts, roads, and cities, were feats of genius that stood as monuments to its power. Rome's systems of law and governance were so effective they became the blueprint for future civilizations. Success wasn't just a goal, it was the air Rome breathed. Each conquered territory, each suppressed rebellion, each year of prosperity reinforced a single, powerful idea: Rome was eternal. This certainty, forged in the fires of countless victories, slowly hardened into arrogance. The empire began to see itself not just as powerful, but as destiny itself, and that was the beginning of the end. The first lesson Rome's fall teaches us is that success can silence the loudest warning signs. Think about it. Long before the final collapse, the empire faced numerous threats: barbarian incursions, economic instability, political corruption. But Rome had faced these problems before and had always emerged stronger. Each crisis survived was not seen as a narrow escape, but as further proof of its inherent invincibility. It was like a champion boxer who, after winning 100 fights, starts to believe he can't be knocked out. He stops watching his opponent's fists and starts listening to the roar of the crowd. Rome's past victories became a dangerous lullaby, soothing its fears and dulling its senses. The early warnings were dismissed as minor disturbances, the same old challenges it had always overcome. But the world was changing, and the threats were evolving. The modern takeaway here is stark. Past success is not a shield against future failure. In fact, the moment we feel most secure is precisely when we should be most vigilant. Complacency is a luxury no one, not an empire, not a company, not an individual, can afford. This leads directly to the second critical lesson. Adaptation stopped. Rome built its empire on innovation, in military tactics, in engineering, in governance. But as its dominance became absolute, that spirit of innovation withered. The empire became a victim of its own success, clinging to the old strategies that had served it so well in the past. While its enemies on the frontiers, the Goths, the Vandals, the Huns, were dynamic, learning, and adapting their tactics, Rome remained rigid, comfortable in its traditions. They were fighting tomorrow's wars with yesterday's rulebook. New threats demanded new thinking, but the Roman machine had become too large, too bureaucratic, and too self-assured to change course. It was easier to trust the proven methods than to risk the uncertainty of the new. This refusal to adapt wasn't a sudden decision. It was a slow, creeping paralysis. It's a powerful reminder for us today. In a constantly changing world, refusing to adapt is simply choosing to fail slowly. Stagnation is a quiet poison. As the empire's institutions grew rigid, so did its leaders. This is the third lesson. They started to believe their own myth. Imagine being a Roman emperor. You are not just a ruler. You are treated as a near-divine figure. Your every word is law. Your image is stamped on coins, and statues in your honor fill every city. In such an environment, where does honest feedback come from? It disappears. The court becomes an echo chamber, filled with advisors who tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to know. Reality becomes filtered through the thick lens of ego. The truth, especially if it was uncomfortable or critical, was seen as dissent or disloyalty. When the leaders of Rome looked in the mirror, they no longer saw a public servant. they saw the embodiment of Roman glory. And when you start believing your own hype, when you surround yourself only with praise, you stop growing, you stop questioning, you stop seeing the cracks forming right beneath your feet. Your greatest strength, your confidence, becomes your greatest vulnerability. This delusion of grandeur was funded by immense wealth, which brings us to our fourth lesson. Wealth created a false sense of security. Rome was rich, unimaginably so. For a long time, it seemed that any problem could be solved by throwing money at it. Barbarian tribes on the border? Pay them off to keep the peace. Disloyal generals? Buy their allegiance with land and gold. A restless population in the city? Pacify them with bread and circuses. But money was a painkiller, not a cure. It masked the symptoms of a deep-seated disease without addressing the cause. Instead of undertaking difficult, painful reforms to its military, economy, and political structure, Rome used its treasury to buy time. It was easier to paper over the cracks with gold than to rebuild the foundations. The wealth delayed the inevitable collapse, but it also made the fall even harder when it finally came. The lesson for us is clear. Money can postpone consequences, but it can never erase them. Real problems require real solutions, not just deep pockets. Finally, and perhaps most tragically, overconfidence blinded Rome to the passage of time. The Romans believed their empire was eternal, and so they acted as if they had an eternity to solve their problems. The issues of corruption, military decay, and economic strain were seen as long-term challenges to be dealt with. Eventually, there was no sense of urgency. Why rush when you are Rome? The empire operated on what we might call empire time, a slow, majestic pace that assumed tomorrow would always be a continuation of yesterday. But time is a silent, relentless force. Small problems, left unattended, don't stay small. They grow quietly, secretly, until they become overwhelming crises. By the time the Roman leadership finally realized the true gravity of their situation, by the time the urgency returned, it was simply too late. The foundations had already crumbled. This is the ultimate warning. Time is not an unlimited resource. The moment to fix a problem is when it's small, not when it's threatening to bring the whole structure down. Rome didn't collapse in a day. It didn't shatter in a spectacular explosion. It faded. It slowly dissolved, protected for far too long by the shimmering mirage of its own confidence. The end was a slow, agonizing process of decline, a quiet surrender to the problems it had ignored for centuries. The story of Rome isn't just a relic of the past. It's a living, breathing warning etched into the very stones of history. It tells us, with chilling clarity, that the greatest danger isn't the enemy at the gates. It's the arrogance within our own walls. The moment you believe you cannot fail is the precise moment that failure begins its silent, patient work. Thank you for watching. If these lessons from history resonate with you, follow our channel for more content that explores the past to understand the present.